Whenever anybody finds out that you homeschool, there are a couple of top questions they ask. Obviously, the first one has to do with how do they make friends or how do they socialize? But a quick second follow-up, especially for those who have younger children, maybe younger than kindergarten or around that age, they will ask you something about how do you teach them how to read? Or they just are basically cannot even understand the fact that mom can teach them how to read at home. But sometimes we get into a situation where we have a child that is struggling with how to learn how to read. We've thought, oh, okay, this is super simple. This is super easy. It won't be a big deal. This could be your first child, and it might be making you feel like you weren't cut out for this homeschool mom thing. No, that's definitely not what we don't need to stop homeschooling because your oldest is struggling with learning how to read. Or you might be a couple of kids in who learned how to read, and then you are now teaching this one, and they're just not picking up on it. What is a mom to do? Listen, I have been in your shoes. I have felt that anxiety. I have cried many tears over this. I have talked to my husband, just belaboring it over and over again. I have tried all of the things, and I have spoken with experts, and it was just something that really weighed on my heart. So I've been in your shoes, and that's why I felt like it was important to do this episode, because we can often feel like we're the only ones. You're not the only one. I've been there. I myself have been the struggling learning to read student. And then I had one myself as well. So let's get into today's episode. And I'm just really hopeful that it's going to encourage you and give you some really great next steps on what to do. And maybe you are here listening to this and your kids know how to read. I want to encourage you to continue listening to this anyway, so that you can help other homeschool moms, or maybe your kids are really young and you haven't even gotten to this point. I'm excited for you to listen as well, so that you are feeling well prepared and confident in case you encounter this situation in your homeschool. Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast. I am Leigh Nguyen, a mom who never intended to homeschool, but all these years later, I couldn't imagine a better life for my family. My hope is that I may offer you the encouragement I so desperately needed to begin homeschooling and to continue through all the years of home education. I am so glad you're listening to this episode, so let's get into today's topic. Let's start with saying that there is a difference between a child not being interested in reading and a struggling child. There can be some kids who just have no interest. Unless they are interested in something, they are just not even going to put forth any effort. And so you have to stop and recognize that. Because if they had the interest, they possibly could pick up on it really quickly and easily. So let's take a moment and analyze that. You might find that you really don't have a struggling reader. You just have a kid who just doesn't have the maturity to say, okay, mom is requesting that I do this now, and she wants me to learn how to read. And if that is the case, then you're going to take a different approach than today's approach and what we're going to be talking about. So ask yourself, are they struggling with learning how to read, or are they disinterested? Yes, a struggling reader could be disinterested because, again, they might just lack the maturity. They just might, the lack of interest could cause them to struggle. They just maybe don't have the ability to do it quite yet. And we have to remember that we're not in school. We don't have to follow the school guidelines of when children are taught how to read. And I'm going to start off and say, I am not a reading expert. I am not going to profess to be a reading expert. You can find them out there. You can find one that you can learn from. There's podcasts, there's books, there's all kinds of resources out there for you to hear from experts. I'm going to talk today about your heart posture and just overall generalizations of how to approach this if you're finding that you have a child that is struggling with learning how to read. So my suggestion is to find out, are they struggling? Are they really trying? Or are they just disinterested? Because there'd be two different approaches. So we're going to say you're still listening to this. So you have a child that is struggling with learning how to read. And what does it mean that they're struggling how to read? Hopefully you don't have a 3 or 4-year-old that you are saying they're struggling how to read. If you have a 3 or 4-year-old and you are saying that they are struggling how to read, I say this with as much grace as I can. Put the curriculum down. Stop the pressure. That's too young. Let them go play. Okay? That's your goal right now. You might have a 5-year-old that is struggling how to read. They might just be a young 5-year-old. I always just kind of feel a little bit bad for the kids that are struggling how to read and they start kindergarten and they just turn 5 right before. And I'm really going to get into this topic. There's something I want to say to you right now, but I don't want to say it yet. I'm going to save it for the end because I think it's really important to wrap this up and tie it up together with one final thought that's going to link to what I just said to you right now. So what is struggling how to learn how to read? What is the age? I mean, I did a little bit of research, but again, I'm not a research person. I'm not an expert on this, but you know when your child is struggling to learn to read. It might be just maturity. It might be a lack of focus. It might be just disinterestedness in it. Is that a word? Probably not, but I'm going to use it anyway. And so you will know that they are struggling how to read when you have been working at this and you have been trying and they have been trying. So it might be, you might say they're struggling how to read and they're 6. You might say they're struggling how to read and they're 8, 9, 10. I mean, those older ages, then definitely, yes, they're struggling how to read. So first, I promise to you, if your child is struggling with learning to read, I promise that everything will be okay, even though this feels overwhelming right now. I want you to stop and think for a moment. So let's say your child is, we'll just go with 8 years old, and they're struggling how to learn how to read. Think about the past 8 years. There were other great hurdles that you have had in your motherhood with them. It could be something that is related to their health or their sleep, or maybe they had an accident and got stitches or a broken bone, or it's just relational or it's emotional. There have been other struggles that you have had with raising this child, getting them to 8 years old, and those have been resolved. I promise that this will be resolved. Will the resolution be that your child is an amazing, crazy proficient reader? Possibly not. And we're going to get into my second point here is really going to tie this in. And that's okay. So I'm not promising you that they're going to be 10 years old suddenly and they're going to be reading Shakespeare and understand it all, or they've already tackled English and now they're learning Latin or something like that. I'm not promising you that, but I am promising you that everything will be okay. Even if at the end of this, you find that your child has a diagnosis of something, and that is why they're struggling to read, I still promise that everything will be okay. There are resources, there are ways of helping, there are ways of equipping our children to still be successful in life, okay? So it feels overwhelming right now, but I promise you that this will be okay. So think about other urgent issues and think about the fact that those have been resolved. This feels like an urgent issue right now. It will be resolved. It might be a couple months from now. It might be more than a couple months from now. It might be a year from now. It might be a couple of years from now, but it is okay. This too shall pass, I promise you. Second, let's take a deep breath. And I want you to look at the child right in front of you. That child, not their siblings that are older or younger, not the cousins that are maybe born within a few months of them, not the friends that they have, not the generalizations of what 6-year-olds should be doing and how good of reading they should be. You can look up online and say, what should a 6-year-old be reading? And that's just a general, broad idea of what they should be reading. There are averages for kids learning how to read. So that means that there is a spectrum of them learning how to read. So when I did a little bit of research, they were saying 6 or 7. So there could be kids that are older. And I'm going to tell you right now, I had a child that was young to read, and I had a child that was older to read. And that was my struggling reader. But guess what? That child can read absolutely fine right now. And so it felt overwhelming at the time, and it took many years to be able to get to that point. But it also was worth the journey and the time, because this child and I really bonded. I learned a lot. There was a lot of growth and sanctification for me in it. And I became much more, I would say maybe attached to this child, like we had something going there. And I'll talk a little bit about my process and stuff of going through this. But let's take a deep breath and look at the child that is right in front of you. Just because this child is struggling how to read does not mean that this child does not have strengths. Doesn't mean that there aren't areas that they are excelling in. You might have a child that is struggling to read, but you take a look at their math and you're like, wow, they are just flying through this. So say this child is 5, 6 years old, struggling with learning how to read, but their math. They've got the calendar figured out. They've got the addition. They are just moving on with things, and they are really loving math. We tend to be, our brains, strong in some areas and weaker in other areas. That doesn't mean you can't be strong in all areas, but it just might be a little bit of a natural inclination that they have. So take a look at their strengths. Don't just focus on this weakness of theirs. They have a lot of good in them. They have some great gifts, talents, and abilities that God has given them. So don't ignore those. Awaken those a little bit more. You're not going to ignore the reading part, but you might need to take a step back a little bit and just let them focus on their strengths, especially for children that are really feeling down. And do not let the other siblings or other children make fun of them. If there's older siblings and they kind of can see that this child, I mean, overall, I don't think that children should be poking and making fun and teasing one another. And if you have especially older siblings who are recognizing that this child of yours is struggling how to read, you hear them say one thing, like, do you put a kibosh on that? You have a private conversation with them. You remind them that they have areas that they struggle in, and how would it feel for them to be made fun of? And so have conversations, private conversations with older siblings who might recognize this, and especially if they're siblings that might tend to just use their words to kind of hurt feelings or anything like that. So because it's really hard when a child is feeling like and saying, I'm so stupid. You might have that child right now who's struggling how to read. And you might they'll bury their face in their hands and just say, I'm so stupid. I can't do this. I don't know what my problem is. I'm dumb. And they'll say all these negative things. And so that can take a lot emotionally out of you. Do not ignore them saying that. Speak into their life, okay? Talk to them about the things that God has equipped them with and walk them through this. It's very easy for a child then to carry that for a very long time. So my own personal story is I remember struggling how to read. I went to public school, and I don't remember the reading much in kindergarten. Now, this would have been back in the 80s, but I do specifically remember in first grade being in a particular group. There was 2 other kids in there, and it was the 3 of us and the teacher. And even though they maybe separate them out, they don't separate them out by like maybe group 1, 2, 3. They might like call them, by letters, or they might call them team blue, team orange. You knew that you were with the kids who couldn't get it. And so that was me. I was in the lowest level. And I remember being for a couple of years in the lowest level of reading until just suddenly, I don't remember what it clicked. It's not like it was a magic moment, but it was like, oh, I can read. It clicked, and I would not put down books. And guess what? By the time I got to high school, I was like an honors English. Okay. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of hope. Let's go back to second. Let's take a deep breath. Look at the child in front of you. And let me just say, this is going to sound like just so you're like, that's it? That's all you're going to say? Yes. I'm going to say that all homeschool graduates can read. Just like they say with little kids, like your kid's not going to go off to college. I'm not a proponent of every kid going to college, but this is just a saying. Like, they won't go off to college still in diapers, or they won't go off to college still with their pacifier, or they won't go off to college with blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm talking about. All homeschool graduates can read. So your child will not finish their homeschool education without being able to read. They might have a diagnosis of something, but by the time they graduate, you will have equipped them to possibly either overcome that or to learn how to work with the way that their brain is wired. Third, please take this struggle seriously, but don't freak out. Your child is looking at you to be like the steady Eddie. They are looking at you to be the anchor. They are looking for you to be the calm. They are looking for you to be the smile to their eyes, that they see you and they might be struggling with the reading and they look at you and they have tears in their eyes, and you look over and you say, you're doing a really good job. And you just smile and you say, I love you. And then if you're like, okay, they're going to cry, be like, you know what? Let's put this aside. Let's go and do something else. And just recognizing that they're going to take their cues from you. We think back when our kids were really little, you might have some small ones too. If mom's freaking out, everybody's freaking out. I just remember sometimes my husband would come home and I'd be crying and everybody would be crying because mom's crying. If you're going to have moments of freaking out, moments of tears, do not do that to your child or to any other siblings. Have those tears with your husband, by yourself, with maybe a good close friend, somebody that you trust that's going to hold that, and they're not going to go and talk about it to anybody else. But You have to take the struggle seriously. In other words, you got to do your work. You got to put the time in, but don't freak out about it. Again, remember, this too shall pass, and I promise that everything will be okay on the other side of things. Fourth, pray and do your research. God wants to hear what's on your heart. He already knows. And it will do a lot for you to be able to put that into words, whether you're maybe journaling about it or you are praying out loud. But pray and then also do your research. Get into the podcasts, get into the maybe blogs, the research, get into the books, get into the things so that you are aware of possibly the fact that there might be some type of diagnosis. There might be some type of dyslexia. There might be something there. Know the signs so that you can watch for those, okay? Because it's going to be up to you to recognize those signs, just with anything else. Say you have a child that has possibly a food allergy. You're the one that's watching for signs of possibly any type of food allergy. As you're introducing food to your kids, you're watching, you know what the signs are and you're watching for them. Same with this. Do your research so that you can watch for the signs. Now, your struggling reader, they might just need more time. They might need just more maturity. They just might not be ready for it, and they might need more time. And so you're watching for those signs that maybe there's something there. And sometimes I feel like we can kind of possibly see a sign, but it actually works out in the end. They just weren't quite ready for it. It also might be time for some type of evaluation. So do your research as to what to do with an evaluation. So with my struggling reader, I knew the signs. I was talking to some friends that were reading specialists, and we were talking through this. And one of my really close friends, I kind of explained, and she's like, I think your kiddo's going to be okay. I really do. Let's just wait it out a little bit. And that helped me to continue just do what I was doing. But then there got to be a point, and I was like, you know what? I think this is kind of going on a little bit. I'd like to get some type of evaluation. And so this was with then a reading specialist who would do evaluations. And I said to my child, we are going to go over to Mrs. So-and-so. This is someone he was very familiar with. And I said, I am struggling with what curriculum to get for you for next school year. And she knows a lot of really good curriculums. And I'd like us to go over, and she's going to talk to you about some things and check out like what you know, what you don't know, so that she can help me out. And yes, you might say, okay, you kind of bent the truth a little bit. Yes, I did. Because I didn't want my kiddo to freak out. And so we went to this reading evaluation, was able to get some really good feedback. And I also didn't want my child to, to alter what the results were going to be because they knew that they were being evaluated, if that makes sense. So for me, that's what worked really well. And oftentimes that evaluation, especially if you're seeing some signs, is going to give you some really good direction on maybe possibly somewhere else to go. Or it might just be like the evaluation might just be like, okay, these are some things I'm recognizing, but I don't think anything more needs to be done. Just time needs to be done. You also might need to look for a new curriculum too. Just as an aside, you're like, oh yeah, by the way. But I want to wrap this up here. Fifth, be thankful that your struggling reader is home with you and they are not labeled or they are not just moved along in school. Be thankful. Be thankful that you are the one. You might feel like you are not equipped enough to look for the signs and to know and how to deal with this. But listen, if there is anybody that is a great problem solver, it is a homeschool mom. She can get her done. She can find the answers. She can get things done. She will move mountains to be able to equip her child. And I know that you're going to do that. So be thankful that they are here with you. They aren't being moved along. I mean, the amount of statistics, if you go and look, the amount of kids that are graduating from high school that don't know how to read. Now, this can be a broad statistic. It's talking about all of the schools within the United States, but it is very high. Remember I said that homeschool students will not graduate without knowing how to read. You will do that. You will get it done. But when they are in school, they can be labeled. And then again, they know that label. Remember my story I told you earlier? I knew my label. Or they might just be kind of moved along, just shuffled along. And so both of those things don't really help them at all. Therefore, them being home with you, you can meet them where they are at. And I know that you're going to do that. I hope that this has equipped you, given you some next steps Do not forget that Reimagine Your Homeschool is currently still open for enrollment. However, the enrollment does close this Friday, January 9th. This program is just a quick workshop for you. There's a couple of videos, there's a workbook, and you're going to work through this. And the process of working through this is going to really break down the foundation of your homeschool. And you're going to be able to step into this homeschool year, this 2026. And by the way, also Happy New Year. I know they said the last time too, but it's going to help you with the rest of the homeschool year and feeling strong about it. Maybe you have a struggling reader. Maybe you don't have a struggling reader, but it's going to help you set up goals and really evaluate your family. What's going to be the best course of action for your family for the rest of this homeschool year? And the whole process is actually going to then help you as you begin the next homeschool year, which you're like, wait, what? Let's not talk about that. I know. But as you get back into your rhythm and everything that you have going on with homeschool, I would love to see you over at Reimagine Your Homeschool. However, you only have until this Friday, January 9th, to enroll, and then you can use the course anytime you want. You'll have access to it forever or for as long as it exists, and which will be a long time. But you have to enroll by Friday. So you can go over to littlebylittlehomeschool.com/reimagine, and the link is also in the show notes. I look forward to seeing you over there, and thank you for joining me today for this episode.